All right, everyone, welcome to Aspireship Live. Corey Cossack here. We have a very special guest, Alison Hadden. Welcome to 2021. What a crazy time. And if we're going to do anything today, can't think of anything better than to be sitting down with my very dear friend, Alison, who has a lot of important and impactful things to say. The reason that I wanted to bring Alison on, this is a little bit different than our normal stuff that we do. Alison, independent of what's currently going on in her life and the amazing things she's doing with her organization, her entire life, her entire career really is the epitome of what we think about at Aspireship in terms of transforming your life, like taking control and finding ways to do things that are unconventional and are not thought of as the traditional path that you go on. And what's funny about this is I met Alison shortly after my company was acquired by MindBody, and Alison had recently joined as VP of Marketing on the consumer side of the business. And we got thrown together for this offsite where basically we were paired with a few other people to do a project about some initiatives or something that could impact the business for the upcoming year. And at the time, this is a funny thing about people, like you just don't know what you don't know about people until you really dig in. At the time, I thought, hey, here's this really badass person, just like super cool, edgy. Doesn't care what anybody thinks, like ready to go for it, and just like totally stood out immediately as somebody I wanted to get to know. And it turns out that Alison lived this just remarkable career that is really unlike most things I've seen. And so we're going to spend the time today talking about the evolution of Alison's career. And I would say that for the people that are here today and for those that are going to be watching later, there are a couple things that I'd impress upon you to think about. One, if you're young in your career and you're not sure what you want to do, or you are just getting started and you know that you have a leadership path ahead of you in some form or fashion, that it takes some very specific things that you have to do to be able to make that happen. And I think Alison can help you with that. And second, if you're a leader or you aspire to be a leader later and you're going to be mentoring others for growth in their path, I think it's really important that we share some of these lessons for how you can go about it. So with that very long-winded intro, Alison, welcome to Aspireship Live, and thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Yeah, no worries. I'm super stoked to be here. I feel like the first question I need to ask that's really important is like, is this an explicit or non-explicit piece of content that we're going to be recording? Because I need to know now so that I put my censor on or not.
So I'm going to go ahead and make an executive decision and say that you are more than welcome to be explicit. We typically aren't. We don't do that, by being overly prescriptive or specific about it. We just don't do a ton of it. However, this is all about being real, and this is part of what for me, for Christine, for many others involved in the creation of this company, has been so important, is that we are super real. And we get to say some of the things that managers can't say to their people and stuff like that. And so, be you. Do whatever that is.
All right. I mean, let's hope you don't regret that decision. But I'm super stoked to be here. Everything that you just said, thank you. I felt the same way when you and I met at MindBody. I was just like, wait, this is not your average bear. I was like, this is not just a smart guy, because when you work in tech or when you work in sales, you're going to run into smart people all the time. You're going to find as you move through your career, though, at least I have, that there are certain characteristics or personality traits or sort of there's an X factor that certain people have that to me says these are game changers. These are people who are going to make a difference. They're people that are not sheeple, which are people sheep or sheep people. These are like the crazies, you know, and sometimes they're the ones that may color outside the lines or challenge sort of the conventional thinking. You know, I wish those are typically some of the qualities that fall into this bucket of people whom, when I meet them in my life, professionally or personally, I just have something inside that goes like, that's one of them. It's one of those people. You should probably keep in touch with those people, or you should probably get to know that person. And that's how I felt when I met Corey. So it was no surprise to me, not only learning about his previous company that he successfully sold to Mind Body, but when I heard about Aspireship and I understood the business model, I understood the sort of the drive from an altruistic perspective to genuinely help people who either wanted to get a leg up in sales or get a start in sales, or like so many people I feel like right now are looking for a path and guidance to change careers. And so none of that was surprising to me when I heard about Aspireship. I was like, yep, typical. And then, you know, when Corey asked me to speak, I was like, can't think of a better group of people or a better audience that's suited for me if you want me to talk or ask me questions about my career path. Because it is the salesperson, it is the sales kickoff, it is the sales org that I probably resonate the most with. And that's independent of the executive team or executive leadership, which is where my career took me. I am at my heart a salesperson. I believe that marketing is essentially just a more creative form of sales. I am happy to talk more about it, but you know, when Corey asked me and sort of described to me the people who would be on this call and potentially listening to or watching this video down the line, I was like, well, yeah, because you know, my path, as Corey mentioned, was not a traditional one. But depending on, here's the marketer in me, depending on the story you tell, it makes perfect sense. So I can tell the story that makes perfect sense. And then I can give you the sidebars of what was really driving me or what I was really thinking. Because, you know, many people are surprised when I tell them that, no, my career actually started in sales. And I tell them that I spent the greater part of that first 10 years of my career in the sales org, not the marketing org. So I'm happy to go in any direction you want, happy to answer any question that you have, but most importantly, happy to be here. And hope my light rang. Haven't turned on my light. I haven't like been on video. I've been recording a lot of podcast episodes for my podcast, and we don't do video. So it was a shock this morning to be like, Allison, like put pants on, like, get the light ring out, you know? So,
all right. Well,
yeah, go ahead.
I'm gonna try and keep it together and not laugh too hard. But thank you for the kind words. That's really awesome. And you know, what's interesting to me is, and you said this to me when we talked the last time before we did this, that you started your career in sales. If you look at your resume, you look at your LinkedIn, it says you started as a sports writer. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us?
And I'm going to, yeah. And
tell
I'm
us about that and that time in your life.
I'm going to give this audience like all the little tricks and tips, so that imposter syndrome that I think we all have at all levels in any profession that we have, where we go, well, that person's fancy or that person knows what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I want to make sure I reiterate to people, everyone has that. Everyone has that feeling. So I'm going to give you a little bit of the behind the curtain. Did I begin my career as a sports writer? Yes, I was 17. So on my LinkedIn profile, I did not put the year I think I graduated college. I made it very vague so that you don't know you don't know exactly how old I am. So that also makes it kind of hard to figure out exactly when my career started. So I was given an internship at my prep school in high school. At that time, when I was like, 8, basically, I really was convinced, because I was pretty passionate about writing. I thought I was going to get into PR in sports. I thought first I was going to be a sports writer. So I was given this internship to work for my local paper that covered me as a high school athlete. By the time I graduated, they had offered me basically a, contract position, essentially, where during my college breaks, when I was home in suburban Philadelphia, I would cover local sports. I was supposed to interview Kobe Bryant because he grew up very close to where I lived, and he was my age. And he actually pulled out of the interview the day before because he had to go to like Russia for some like all-star game. But I was pulled to basically write in my free time. I think I got paid like $50 an article. It took me probably like 10 hours to like perfect and write and go to the game. So like, was it a good use of time? Like, no, not really. But it did help me put something down on paper. When I then went to Trinity College, which is a small liberal arts school in Connecticut, because I wanted to play basketball and I wasn't tall enough or good enough to be a D1 point guard. I worked for 4 years at the Office of Sports Information. So that was like basically my beer money. I was very lucky to have the financial support of my parents in college, but anything beyond kind of the basics was my responsibility. So I worked for 4 years in the Office of Sports Information, knowing that I could put that on my resume, because I had in my mind at 18, 19, 20, I am going to be a sports writer. And then it evolved to, okay, I'm going to work in PR in sports. And, one of the lessons of my career that I want to always impart on people who are earlier in their career is, you don't have to have the thing. You don't have to know the title, the role, the path, the function when you are just graduating school. Because if anything, what I've learned is your path is going to be your path. It's going to be far more important in those first couple years out of school, or if you're making a career change, to really, really hone in on what you're good at and what you love doing. Because from my perspective, that's where engagement comes from. Everybody hopefully on this call wants to take a job that's going to give them a paycheck, but the aspirational goal hopefully is to find a job that doesn't feel like a job, where you're willing to put in extra time and extra hours, because it literally, time flies by and you're in a flow state. Like an athlete would probably describe. And for me, that flow state is when I find things that I'm good at, much better than the average person, but also the things that I really love doing. And I think it's far more important in those first couple of years to try different things, to get different experience and different roles, so that you can really hone in and speak in interviews about not necessarily your experience, but framing your job experience around the understanding and self-awareness of, these are the things that I bring to the table that no one else does. And I'm super passionate about them, which means that I am able to rise above the noise of everyone else and be a high performer, right? And love it. And for me as a manager, like, that's what I want to hear when I interview somebody. I want to hear somebody that's not just rattling off the accomplishments, but that's got some passion and some energy and emotion that says, I'm going to love what I do because I've done the work to figure out I really enjoy this. Here's why. So bringing me back now to my 20s, I was convinced I was going to be a sports writer. I was convinced then I was going to be in PR, because I was like, these sports writers, like, they have no personality and they're very closed off from like society, and they go to games and they watch, and then they hide in their room and they write for like hours, and that's like their job. And I was like, I don't want that. So I was like, I'll be in PR. But I went to a small liberal arts school where they didn't offer marketing, communications, public relations. They offered things like, I majored in English literature. So my senior thesis was like on Jane Eyre. did that help me in like my marketing career? Specifically, no. But what majoring in English literature did was it did fine tune my writing abilities. It helped me learn how to be an effective communicator. And those things are two things that even running into incredibly, incredibly intelligent people in my career, I can't tell you the number of people who were super bright and yet were horrible writers and were just really ineffective communicators. And as a result, all of their magic in terms of their intelligence got lost because they weren't able to assess their audience, determine the right way to communicate to them, and then do it, clearly and concisely. It was still in my 20s. I was convinced I was going to be on this sports path. I was going to write, do PR. And my very first job, I moved out to San Diego after school. And my very first job, I never wanted to be in sales. Ew, who wants to be in sales? Gross. Like used car salesman, don't push things on me I don't need. I feel icky. Stop like standing at my door and not allowing me to shut it. Like I had a terrible association with sales. And frankly, I think the world still does. And I think that's always going to be an uphill battle for a lot of people. But I was given the opportunity to work for a semi-pro indoor soccer team in San Diego, again, staying in the kind of sports realm. My goal was to prove myself in the sales role that was offered to me so that I could move over into PR, even though they had a team of one. And my very first job in life, technically, was selling season tickets for this semi-pro indoor soccer team over the phone to primarily Spanish speaking households. Keep in mind, I spoke no Spanish. So let's just say I didn't make a lot of money in that first job, which was primarily commission only. It was primarily commission. But what I did learn in that was, again, one of the lessons that I feel like I always want to impart when I speak with college students or people who are earlier in their career or career changers is, the first step to making your way where you want to go is kick ass at the thing that you're doing right now. It is the first thing I tell people, whenever I'd have someone come to me and say, I want to come on your team, or I want to move over, or I'd be like, great, kick ass at what you're doing right now. What are your numbers looking like right now? Have you been at the top of the leaderboard? Are you outperforming your peers? Are you taking on additional, responsibilities? Like, that's the first step to getting where you want to go, is don't be so focused on that you are not, just over delivering in your current role. So going back to that, do you want to ask questions? Do I keep talking? How this works? I'm sorry. I'm just like literally going back through.
It's all good. We're just all mesmerized over here. So yes, usually we ask lots of questions, but you're just rolling. So I was just just keep going. So talk about, and I didn't know that, by the way, like this whole sequence of events here. So that's so awesome. So talk about the transition from there to your first, B2B SaaS role. Quite a ways back when it wasn't quite as hot of a thing as it is today.
No, I don't even think we called it SaaS. Like I don't even remember what we called it at that time. Yeah. So I'm in my early 20s. I work for the Soccers for a year. I write which my parents just found it when they were going through some old stuff and brought it out to me. I wrote like a 4-page single-spaced letter announcing my resignation as a 22 or 23-year-old from the Soccers, because I really just didn't see a path for me there. And I ended up hearing about a company called active.com, and this was in 2003. And it was at the time, an online registration company that was essentially taking a percentage of the payments that were processed through their site. But the challenge was, this was 2003. people were still filling out online registration forms for all their sports events. So if you wanted to do a 5K or a 10K or sign your kids up for Little League, like you weren't going online and like giving them your credit card. You were filling out a form, putting your credit card number on the paper form and then mailing it back. And they gave me an opportunity. I went through the interview process and I was like, I think this is perfect. It's sports and technology, and it's here in San Diego, and it's this great oceanfront office and this awesome culture of athletes. This is perfect. And they were like, okay, do you want to be an account manager or do you want to be in sales? And I was like, oh, account management times 100, because I had that negative association with sales. And so they started me in account management. And within 6 months, they were like, okay, so we don't care what you want anymore. You're going into sales. And I was like, boo. And then they were like, you'll make more money. And I was like, okay, I'll try it. So
really,
I did.
Yeah. Quickly, Alison, how did the account management role, like how did the interview even happen? Was it serendipity? Did it just happen? Or
I believe, yeah. So again, this is like 2003. There was no LinkedIn, right? The ability to network and connect with people online was like non-existent. When we say you had to know someone in the company, like you literally like had to know someone in the company. And I believe I found the job. I do believe I found the job like online on some sort of like online classified board that was specific to San Diego, because there were only about 30 people at the company at that point. Like fun fact, active.com then became the Active Network. They actually went public during my time there. And during about the greater part of 10 years that I was an employee, they went from 30 to over 5,000 employees. So it was definitely a hyper growth situation, which is similar to my other two companies where I was. But yeah, I found very quickly from a sales perspective that this negative association that I had with sales, of salespeople being gross, that I was able to create my own definition of sales. I was able to, with no sales training and no formal training, figure out that if I really, really understood the needs of the person that I was selling to, that was going to help me assess whether or not I could help them. And then it was up to me then to just be a really effective communicator and position whatever I was offering based on what their needs were, which is like, welcome to, consultative sales 101, which you guys are I'm sure all learning and all becoming like experts in. But it was really awesome because I realized that I don't have to take a page out of someone else's sales playbook. I can create my own, one that I feel good about, one that I feel like still leaves me with integrity and honesty, and I can build long-term relationships with potential customers and clients. And, what I found was that by crafting my own philosophy of sales, I was successful. And I was more successful, and I kept kind of moving up the ranks, and I, was able to take on a sales leadership role. And then I started to learn, oh God, it's very different to be a really successful individual salesperson. That turn from salesperson to sales leader, sales manager, it's like a totally different bucket of skills. And I learned that the hard way, because what makes you a great salesperson doesn't necessarily make you a great sales leader. But I started to learn about leadership, and again, did the same thing with sales for me, which was, kind of determining my leadership philosophy and how I led, and learning over time that I didn't have to be a cookie cutter version of another sales manager, another sales leader. In terms of the sales kind of progression that you just asked about, Corey, I started with basically like web-based online registration. So I was selling to events, and I was specifically then put in higher education, where I've always been in new markets. So I was always the one that they were like, oh, put Hadden on that thing that we don't really know if it like is going to be a thing. And we'll just like dangle some carrots in front of her, and we'll see, like, let's just wind her up and like, let her run. And I've always been in jobs like that in retrospect. But they put me in a role where it was, let's see if we can take this software from a company that we bought in Canada that was used for parks and recreation management. So when you sign your kids up for everything that happens in non-COVID times, and you go to your city's Parks and Recreation Department, active.com, the Active Network probably owns the software that processes all of that and deals with all of the information you're submitting. And so I was selling that software to university recreation departments. So huge universities like Arizona State University and NYU and University of Florida and all these really huge colleges and universities. I'm trying to sell them, talk about square peg round hole in retrospect. I was trying to sell them software that was built for a completely different vertical, completely different industry, essentially, different set of needs. I was trying to sell it into them. And I had a technical sales engineer, and we definitely traveled a ton. So we had no Zoom. We did things, via phone, and then, we would like share your screen. Like, it was super archaic and not like it is now. But yeah, I loved the hunt of sales. I loved, as an athlete my whole life, feeling like it was a game. I loved, as I mentioned, creating my own philosophy and my own, putting my own spin on everything, both as an individual rep and then later as a leader. And you're going to ask probably about how the heck then did I get into sales enablement and sales training?
I am, but I have one first.
Yeah.
So before that, how did you respond when Active was like, hey, we have some little experiment. We want to go, mess with your money and your ability to make commission and, potentially set you up for failure. But, you're the one we want to go do it with. How'd you respond to
that? Thank you. Pretty much. Thank you. Thank you was probably my response. I think when you're younger in your career or earlier in your career and you want to make a good impression and you still have a little bit of that imposter syndrome where you're like, I can't believe this is my job. Like, they're paying for me to stay at the Best Western in like Sheboygan. Like, I'm living the dream. That was like how I felt about it. And when they were like, we want to send you on the road and have you do this, and we're going to give you $20 for dinner. And I was like, what? This is magical. So, I didn't see anything wrong with it. I remember pushing back on their absolute made up quota for this new role in a new market that they had zero historical data, on. And I remember being like, $1 million quota with an ASP of like 100 grand. And I was like, so 10 deals in a year, but we've never even, and I was like, does this feel high? And they were like, I mean, it's a little bit of a stretch, but like, if anybody can do it, it's you. And I was like, all right. And like, that was like the bulk of my pushback. So it, I think as you gain more confidence in your career, you have mentors and people in your life that you can say, hey, I don't want to like just jump into this without coming back with a smart kind of data-driven argument. What do you think? I didn't have anybody in my life at that point that was really mentoring me or helping me. So yeah, I didn't.
That aside, because you're in those situations, it's helped you become the person that you are, right? You can take on any challenge, right? And you don't want to be stupid about it, right? And shoot yourself in the foot with your career, with your income, with all that stuff. Right. But you took on challenge after challenge after challenge. Partially maybe because you didn't know any better, but also because like that's just part of the person you are. And I think that's so important. So I'm glad you shared it.
I think also, admittedly, like it is the result of a privilege that I had at that point. I was in my mid 20s and I was not, I wasn't married. I didn't have any kids. I didn't have any responsibilities outside of myself. And when you do have responsibilities outside of yourself, or you are responsible for other people or little humans, like you have to make different decisions. And I recognize that I wasn't in that spot.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now on to the training and enablement piece. So you were kicking butt as a sales rep, you got a little bit of leadership experience, and then all of a
Yep.
sudden you're the enablement person?
Well, so active.com grew not organically like Mind Body did. It grew through acquisition. So getting from that 30 to 5,000 people came not by like building a scalable business built on a really solid foundation, but instead just being like, hey, let's just buy every company that is like processing payments online for anything that we can think of. And I mean everything from, we did acquisitions of Reserve America that was for campsites, campgrounds, hunting and fishing licenses. We moved into the faith space and bought companies that were processing payments for online donations for mega churches in the South. Like anything you could think of, we bought them. And so as a result, we have all of these companies with their respective sales forces. Some are small, some are large, that are getting folded in to Active. And we have no central function for the company that's responsible for ensuring everybody, not like product aside, that's a whole nother thing. But from a sales and marketing perspective, we didn't have a central function that was figuring out how to ensure that all of our sales reps were sort of singing from the same songbook, and do we at least have the foundational sales skills that are consistent now across our company, instead of all these fragments. And so they had tapped me to be the person that was going to be the director of sales, responsible for a 60-person sales org that was going to be absorbed by the company through an acquisition. It was very hush hush. I had like 2 months to plan for it. So I started to build out a lot of training materials. I started to pilot stuff internally. I started to become a hybrid of like an instructional designer and a sales trainer and a sales manager all at the same time in preparation for this acquisition. And long story short, in the 10th hour, literally on December 30th, the acquisition was supposed to go through on the 31st. The entire acquisition fell through. And I basically spent that holiday period talking with my boss at the time, who was the VP of sales, basically being like, what am I going to do now? Because that was supposed to be my job. My job was supposed to be to, we took off, we carved out everybody from my team, and like I've been running solo prepping for this. And all I was told was to kind of hang tight, which is weird and scary, and it comes with no commission. And long story short, since I started to pilot things, they were like, keep piloting things. And I basically was like, crap, I got to like make a job for myself really fast, or else I don't know what's going to happen. In retrospect, I don't think they would have let me go. But I was super nervous at the time. And so I was like, I'm going to make the case for someone. Sales enablement was not a word at the time. It was sales ops or sales training. But I was like, I'm going to make the case for me to be in a non-existent sales operations function here at the company. And I'm going to be the one that builds the training and puts together a 5-day boot camp for every acquisition sales team that comes into the company. And I'm going to train everybody existing and all the new people on it. And I will handle the entire thing. You're going to have to send me to all of those offices. And I love to travel. And I was in my late 20s. So I was like, huzzah. I'm like, I'm going like beyond the bright lights of Sheboygan. And I basically made that pitch and proved it. And that's exactly what happened. I carved a space out, and it's not the last time in my career I did that, but I was like, there's a need. I'm the person to fill that need. I'm going to kick ass at what I've been asked to do, knowing that I'm going to be moonlighting to point myself in that direction. I'm going to make a strong pitch, and I'm going to get it. And it came with a little bit of ignorance, and ignorance is bliss sometimes, but it worked. And they were like, okay. And so for the final 2 years for me at Active, I built the what later I called the global sales training and enablement function. It was a team of, I think, 4. But I built it from the ground up. It started as just me. I did get them to send me to places like London and Sydney and Toronto and a bunch of places in the US that I didn't really care about. And it was a great learning experience because I then got recruited by Glassdoor to basically come from San Diego up to the golden land of San Francisco tech for the first time and build that enablement ops training, really sales management function from the ground up, because there was only a VP of sales and no managers and 30 reps, which was a broken system to begin with. But so that was basically my 20s.
Wow. So amazing. And we could totally spend time digging into it, but there's just so much more to cover with you. So I really would love to talk a little bit about this next phase at Glassdoor, because this really is the biggest pivot, especially, or it seems that way from the outside, especially at that stage in your career after you've done all of this. It takes so much work and courage and dedication to succeed and get to that level. And then you go and you make another pivot. So tell us about that.
Yeah. So at this point I am, 30, I think. I've been in this, I successfully built and started to scale this role at Active. And I know I want to be in San Francisco. I have a list of companies where I want to work. Glassdoor is on that list because at that time I was a really passionate user because I was at I was at Active, and my gosh, one of my best friends and I, who is still currently at Glassdoor and heads up the sales function there. She and I would sit and we'd read the Active reviews on Glassdoor and just be like, "Bah, this is brilliant! Like this place is going to hell." So I was passionate about it. I thought it was really interesting. And I also thought Glassdoor is something that is helping people like me make these decisions about where I'm going to work. And this is one of the most important decisions that someone can make. And I've always wanted to be part of kind of mission-driven companies, or at least companies that had products that I felt really passionate about. So I knew though at this time that, so I saw a role posted on Glassdoor's website for a sales enablement specialist. I was not a specialist at this point. I was a director, I believe. And I was like, once I started to understand their org, I was like, they need more than a specialist. They need a leader. They need a much higher level person than what they're asking for. And I was like, I'm going to have to make the pitch for it. I'm going to go get it. And so I applied to the job online, didn't hear anything. 2 weeks later, applied again, didn't hear anything. Looked at my network, didn't know anyone, started trying to connect with people on LinkedIn from Glassdoor. And again, this is back now in 2010. This is 10 years ago. And long story short, I couldn't get in with the company. And I was like, I am so overqualified for this job. This is bananas. And I believe I got in through the HR assistant person who put my email in front of the VP of sales. But long story short, for anyone that goes, well, I guess I wasn't qualified, or I guess they didn't care. I would never have worked at Glassdoor had I not taken the bull by the horns and been like, I'm at least going to get in front of somebody. I'm not going into the black hole of freaking applications here. And I think that happens all the time. It was a huge problem we were trying to solve at Glassdoor. So I ended up pitching, getting in front of the VP of sales over time, pitching him for a larger role, explaining to him why they needed it. But in the back of my mind, I was like, I don't want to do sales. Excuse me. I was like, I don't want to do sales enablement. This is not what I want. But I spent 3 months convincing them that I was the sales enablement queen and they needed to hire me in order to scale and be successful, or else they're going to be flushing all this money down the drain. The reason why I wanted to take that role is because, at least in my career, I have found the company to be far more important than the role when I have been assessing what job to take next. And so many times people, I feel like, are stuck on the level of the role, the title of the role, and they focus so much more on that than they do the company, the culture, the product, the mission, the vision, all of that stuff. I knew when I interviewed at Glassdoor and I walked in and there was no receptionist and there were boxes everywhere and it was super janky, and I had my first interview with the CEO who was not wearing any shoes, that I was like, this is that. I'm like, I just knew in my gut, I was like, this is the place, I got to work here. And so I basically teed up at the same time. I didn't want to work at LinkedIn, but I knew through my research. So that's another thing. Like, I am a maniacally obsessive researcher and preparer. And if it looks like I, go into interviews or go into things I do now and have it seem off the cuff, that's the point. But that's never how it is. So I would recommend everyone be over prepared. It's not nerdy, it's not dorky. The top people are the ones that make it look like it's easy. But I basically was able to tee up, like in a horse race, moving both of them at the same time. I knew for negotiating leverage that if I had an offer on the table, or at least somewhere close to it from LinkedIn at the same time that I was trying to get this job at Glassdoor, that it would provoke an emotional response in the buyer, who is the CEO, and essentially give me a lot of leverage and have him potentially make an emotional decision around how much to pay me. And that's exactly what happened. I never wanted to work for LinkedIn, but I tried to find a job that was like kind of close, and did end up getting an interview, and then got a second interview and got them to pay for my hotel room in San Francisco so that I could casually mention it when I interviewed for the third time with the CEO, that, oh, well, I have a hotel because of LinkedIn. And that was just like, you could tell, just like got his goat. And that helped in my process later. So I took that job at Glassdoor knowing that Glassdoor, the company, was the place for me. Sales enablement was not. I always had a feeling and had people tell me that I should be in marketing, but I had no prior marketing experience other than the things I did kind of on the job for other people and for myself. I basically just had in my head, I'm going to do this job and I'm going to kick ass, and I'm going to get some job in marketing within a year and a half to 2 years. And it happened in like 9 months, where I found my replacement. I kicked ass. I found my replacement. And as a result, I made the pitch, and they eventually were like, okay, you can be our first B2B marketing leader. And so I found my replacement, moved over into B2B marketing. And then from there spent, 5 years in marketing at Glassdoor, building all the functions from, B2B marketing and demand gen to brand marketing to creative to consumer research, consumer insights, brand advertising, built all the teams there. And yeah, I knew once I got over into marketing that I was like, yes, like this is my home. And then, MindBody recruited me to be their first VP of marketing on the consumer side for the business, trying to take a company that had been a B2B SaaS company for, 10 plus years. And they wanted to turn it into a marketplace company, where, you kind of have equal parts consumer and B2B, they fuel each other. And they wanted to do that for very little money and very quickly, which was lovely. So,
which is very common, by the way, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is a strange occurrence that is not rare.
Oh man, well, what a great story! Thank you for sharing all of that.
Sure.
I think there's so many lessons to be learned, but if you think back to not just how you were able to do those things, but you and I know have spent time talking about things like being around toxic people and really knowing when it's your time to move somewhere else or surround yourself with the right people and the right situations. So in that vein, do you have a top 1 or 2 things in your career that if you could do them over again that you wouldn't do?
That's a good, really, really good question. I think one thing I learned the hard way, and I won't get too specific with it, was uh, just to recognize. I hate to say recognize your place because that sounds really like sheeple-y. Um, but I didn't recognize, starting from that 4-page letter that I wrote at 22 announcing my resignation. I was a little full of myself and didn't recognize the power that as I grew in my career, certain people had in organizational environments. And I just assumed that if you tell the truth, that that's always going to benefit you and people are going to believe you. And the reality is that if you're low man on the totem pole at times, or there's someone that is above you or has a lot more power wielded in an organization, you need to take that into account when you make decisions because although it may be unfair and unjust, people may not believe you. They may believe the person that has more power. And I don't think that's right. But I also believe that that is the reality of the world. And it's sort of a lesson that I learned after getting burned a couple times by not understanding that hierarchy. So I think it's okay to speak out. I think it's okay to say, I don't think this, I just think back to my career. Yeah, I don't think this person is like the right fit for this job. And that person's my boss. And I don't think I should have his job, but here's how I would structure the org, right? Like, if you're going to do things like that, you have to be okay with the potential consequences. And I don't think I thought about the consequences of speaking up and challenging. You know, I'm a natural challenger. I ask a lot of questions. I look for different options and back doors, and that's a huge benefit and has been in my career. But I don't think I learned the hard way that being a challenger, you have to be willing to take some risks, right? And the bigger the challenger you are within a larger organization, and the louder you are about what you think should be different, the more risk that comes with that. And I don't think it means be quiet by any means, but I think it just means like definitely think about it because there may be repercussions that might be unfair. And I have always been someone that's been like, well, if I'm telling the truth, how could it, you know, I learned the hard way on a couple things. Wouldn't change my personality for it. But I definitely would have probably turned the volume down a bit, and been a little bit more thoughtful in the way that I was communicating.
It's such an important point because if you think about that, yeah, there's going to be times when you want to turn down the volume. But what really matters is that you understand what you're getting yourself into.
Yes.
You understand what you're stepping into.
Right.
And if you're someone that's like, no, I'm not dealing with that in this kind of place, I'm not dealing with this type of person, or no, this is wrong, and I know that this company is not going to succeed down this path, therefore I'm going to say my piece. And if they don't like it, you know, I'll leave, or if I'm forced to leave, it's fine, like I'll do that. Like that's okay, but you have to know.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Whew, I'm like getting goosebumps just thinking about some like wonderful decisions that I made. But, and also like, I think about this stuff and like, if I were, let's say, what's the average age, or maybe you don't even track that kind of stuff.
So we have people from all backgrounds.
Got it. Well, okay. So
in every sense of the word.
Which is awesome. I think what you guys are doing at Aspireship is rad. If some of the things I'm saying, I could see the counter being like, well, how will I know? Like, how would I know that where that line is between standing up for something I believe in, or when asked a question, being honest about something versus thinking about the repercussions and maybe checking myself a little bit. And I go back to that, not having enough mentors or people that I leaned on, or should have leaned, or people that I had, but I didn't tap into as much. Because a lot of it has now just come from a gut instinct that has been fine-tuned through experience, right? Years and years of experience of making the right call and not making the right call and learning from those experiences, to the point now where I'm able to just sort of get quiet and listen to that inner compass and go, oh, like I know what it's telling me. I can help, I can guide myself more now. What I would recommend to anyone else, though, who's in a new career or changing functions or earlier in their career, is to lean on the mentors and the people that have gone before you to help you understand like where those boundaries are, and help refine your inner compass. Because that's what I rely on now, right? The inner compass, and be it, a mentor or someone, or like Christine was just talking about, like a community, rely on a community, crowdsource information, like have people be able to sort of, check you. And that stuff in retrospect is another thing that I wish I had just done a better job of. Not let me be the captain of my own ship all the time, but let other people weigh in and ask them for their feedback.
Well, we are so close on time already. I mean, this has flown by and just amazing. I think I'd ask, is there any like one last piece of feedback or piece of advice you'd give to your younger self or to others here in pursuing any type of career progression?
Yeah, I mean, I would say, as I mentioned, find the things that you're good at, find the things that you love. The Venn diagram overlap there is going to be the key to unlocking a job that you are going to hopefully end up loving. Look at the company versus the title and the role. As I mentioned, I just think it's, at least in my experience, there's going to be far more opportunity if you are a go-getter within the confines of one company. If you are just concerned about getting in and kicking ass at that first role and trusting that you can help make the path for yourself there at that company after. And then lastly, with, anybody that researches me or sees anything on LinkedIn, you'll recognize that I am on the sidelines right now. I am battling cancer. It's been a shit hand I've been dealt. But I'm grateful because I have a platform right now with my podcast called No Time to Waste, with speaking engagements that I do for sales orgs and companies, and conferences and events, where I can take, this 20-year career that I've built, and instead of feeling like I'm on the sidelines, I can still apply it because, I believe that we're all in sales. I believe that if you are a great salesperson and you learn the foundation of really strong consultative selling, that it will position you to take any role and be better at it. And I also think it will help you convince your husband or your wife that you need to get that bigger TV. It will help you, lure your dog inside. It will help you with everything. And I do believe that we're all in sales. So the last thing I leave you with is, keep in mind where our job fits within the greater kind of scheme of the rest of our lives, right? Because there are days we spend so much time at our jobs that it's everything. It's our identity. It's where we spend our time. It's what takes us away from our family. And all of that stuff is 100% real and true, which is why make sure you work with great people. However, when you are facing a life and death situation, which I am right now, man, the job seems a lot smaller. And it seems like something that is fun and something that I miss, not something that is a burden, or something that I have to do. It's a privilege. And I share that with you guys just in a moment of, just transparency and authenticity, which I know you guys subscribe to at Aspireship, which is great. Just to remember, that this is the only life we've got. right? Make sure that your career is in line with hopefully the things that you love doing. But also remember that the stuff that matters most that I subscribe to, has to do with being grateful for what you have. It has to do with the relationships that you have with people and connection, and it has to do with finding the things and leaning into the things that bring you joy. If your job falls in there, then you are extra lucky. But if not, just remember, at the end of the day on your deathbed, no one said, and specifically one of the 5 most common regrets that people have is that they worked too much. And this is coming from someone who worked a lot. So just keep that in mind. Try and keep things in balance. Kick ass though when you are leaning into your work. Yeah, live and work. Kind of, not work. Live like there's no time to waste, which is typically what I say. So
Alison, we are so touched by your presence here today, and we're so thankful that you're able to share this, and it will be seen by lots and lots of people. So thank you again. Everyone, check out No Time to Waste and follow Alison on LinkedIn. Lots of great stuff there. And Alison, thanks again.
No worries. Thanks, guys. Good luck with everything.
Thank you. See you soon.